All right, great. Well, we are at 6:03, and I think we ought to start. I am Todd Bernstein. Thank you, everyone, for being here, both in the Zoom and watching on live stream. Thanks for joining us for our 14th annual Beer Summit conversation, which is part of our ongoing series of conversations on race, class, and power. We at Global Citizen are a nonprofit organization that promotes racial and social justice through civic engagement and education. I invite you to learn more about us at globalcitizen365.org. A special thanks to not only my staff colleagues, but our guest conversationalists who you're going to be meeting. They are Dr. Jason Johnson, activists Asa Khalif, Jeremy Griffin, and Maurice Cunningham, as well as Ken July and our moderator, David Brown. So if any of you are either here for the first time or wondering why we call this a beer summit, this is the anniversary. It's actually the 13th anniversary, but it's our 14th beer summit, if you can do the math. But it marks the anniversary of the 2009 arrest of Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates in Cambridge on his own porch as he was returning from a trip to China, trying to get into his own house. He had misplaced his key. A passerby, a white woman, saw this, thought that Skip Gates was trying to break into this house and called the police. And thus ensued the confrontation between Professor Gates and Sergeant James Crowley, who arrested him. It caused a huge national uproar, particularly given Professor Gates' status as a preeminent scholar at Harvard. And subsequent to that, President Obama invited the two to come to the White House, to the Rose Garden, and to talk about the arrest, talk about race and racism and race relations in the country. And that's how it got dubbed the Beer Summit. At the same time, as the eyes of the nation were transfixed on this gathering at the White House, we decided to do our own Beer Summit conversation in Philadelphia. David Brown moderated that 13 years ago. And we have been doing this ever since, but also as part of a series of conversations on race, class, and power. Tonight, our theme is gun violence triggered by white supremacy. Where do we go from here? Which is taken from the words of Dr. King. The conversation is an opportunity to both discuss these critical issues, to hear from our special guest conversationalists, as we call them, to hear from you in the Zoom, and also, most importantly, to talk about action and what we can do to make our words really mean something. I want to stress that this conversation is a space where we can share perspectives, even if those perspectives are different, but we share them in a respectful way, and we respect those who are sharing them. We have till 7:30, so I'd like to get started, and really appreciate all that are here. I want to start, before turning it over to David, to introduce a dear friend of mine, Kent July. Kent hadn't planned to be here, but less than 2 weeks ago, he lost his son, Zachariah, to gun violence. He was shot and killed in the Northern Liberty section of Philadelphia. I've been speaking with Kent. We normally see each other every weekend with a group of people that hang out together and talk about a whole range of things. And on Sunday, we were talking about it, and I said, Ken, if and only if you are in a place where you feel you can talk about this, we welcome you to do that. And Ken is here, and I'm grateful to him and to Tracy, his wife. He's obviously, Tracy and the family have experienced tremendous pain and loss. We, even if you don't know him, we send our love and condolences and thank you for being here. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Ken, to talk about your experience, what you've gone through, and most importantly, to tell us about Zachariah.
Thanks, Todd. I'm glad you asked to be here, and as you know, and I'll share with everyone, it was not an immediate yes. I told Todd, I have to think about this. Everything is still kind of raw, and I'm a Quaker. So part of it is sitting in silence and sitting with things. And also, honestly, I had to speak to my family, to speak to Tracy about this. And as we both sat and thought about it, it became very apparent that Zachariah said, no, you need to do this, right? You need to talk about what has happened, because this needs to stop happening. And so what did happen, I think, is what I would like to do. My 19-year-old son, Zachariah, in July, Friday night, the 1st of July, he came home after being out in the afternoon had to get cleaned up to go out and hang out with his friends. And these are two friends that he's known since middle school. They played basketball together. They went to school together. And they were out for a couple of hours, came back. They had to get cleaned up because they were going to go to this party with his friends. And so obviously girls kind of changed the math, if you will. And so scrub up and clean up. And anyone who's a parent understands that, boy, what a change from 13 to 19 in that respect. As he left, Tracy had told him, look, be careful. It's a holiday week. And he said, I know, Mom, I know. I'll be careful. I know. So out in the way, the boys went. And around 11:45 p.m. that night, I got a text from Zachariah about the potential trades with Kyrie and the Lakers. So we kind of did that thing overnight, back and forth, and kept in touch with each other, just in general. I was asleep. I didn't respond to that text. I was asleep. Place somewhere I was abruptly awakened. I looked at my watch. It was around 2:00 in the morning, and Tracy said, Zachariah's friend's mother is calling, and she asked her to go and check to see that Zachariah was in his bed. And she went, and he wasn't, and his car wasn't there, and he was not answering the text. And so I texted him, and he didn't answer me. The short of it is, we found out where the last place was from their friends who had been with Zachariah. And what they explained, they'd been at a party, things that felt kind of hinky. They were leaving the party, and then they got separated because gunshots rang out. We went to the scene, and it was right out of the movies. Perimeter set up, patrolmen standing there. I walked up with my ID, saying who I was, because I knew in the wee hours of the morning, I better have my ID out and announce who I am. And the police officer said, well, have you gone to the hospital? And I said, no, this is the last place my son was. And again, it's Zachariah July, and the policeman looked at his clipboard. And he told me, just a minute. And he walked the 50 yards away from me and had a conversation with an officer in a white shirt. And then that officer made the long walk back towards us. And he said, I regret to inform you. And he ended with, I'm sorry for your loss. And when I asked, what is it that we should do next? He told me, and I said, before I leave, I need you to know about Zachariah, my 19-year-old son, who was an avid reader, who was an athlete, who loved painting, who loved writing, right? Who loved to play tennis and soccer. And he was a nephew and a grandson. He had this joy, he had this smile that engaged everyone. You know, he would get you with the eyes first, like he saw everybody. And if that didn't get you to walk over, his smile would. But we were told to go home. So we sat and we waited and we waited and we waited. It got light, and then the detectives called. And we agreed to go down to meet the detectives. And I told Zachariah's story again, because as a father, as a Black father who has two Black sons, I understood the extra things that were expected of them to navigate throughout the world, wherever the heck they were. So this was the worst nightmare, right? That this thing that happened is what we talked about, right? It's where the talk starts. It's that concern, and all the schooling and all the traveling and all the tutoring and all the coaching and encouraging. In a flash, it was gone. And as we came to learn, when the first responders showed up, my son was lying in the street by himself. He had been shot. There was a party. They attended a party with a bunch of other people. And they, inside this party, realized things were kind of hinky. So they went to leave, right? That spidey senses were tingling. They went to leave, which is what we talked to them about. You know, it's 19-year-old guys on a holiday weekend. Zachariah was out in the street. He had made out of the party, but two of his friends had not, and he was waiting for them. And the two friends broke loose to run out of the door. And the guys who were inside the party apparently were shooting, and my son was killed. But when he was shot, he turned and he went 50 more paces trying to get to his car. He was trying to get home, right? We'd always talked about when you're out and you do things, you need to get home safe. It didn't happen. And so we have to deal with that, and our friends and our family, right? People who are never touched by this. We're now all touched. More importantly, we're changed forever. So what's next? We're going minute to minute to try to figure out what is next. We do know Zachariah is telling us something's got to be different. Right. And this is about people. This is about humanness. And I mean humanness and not humanity. Because he was left in the street to die. Just like a piece of refuse. And the entire process feels like there's no humanness left. Right? People aren't thinking about all of the folks as humans, the people who are victims, and the people who are doing this as well. So it feels like something has to be different. And so sitting in silence doesn't feel like something that we're supposed to do. It doesn't help. talking about this, showing the face of a 19-year-old smiling and engaging graduate college student, music loving, painting, laughing, joking, wicked sense of humor, sensitive, caring, 6'5", 19-year-old. It's got to start someplace. He's telling us it needs to start with him. I'm here tonight to listen, to learn, to share our story, and hope that it resonates and that others are willing to jump in and help and learn from everybody that's here as well. Thanks, Todd, for letting me share my story.
I think you're on mute.
David, where are you?
We can hear you now.
David. Oh, you can hear me. I'm so
now,
sorry.
Now, I just been unmuted. Thank you, Todd.
Okay.
But I also just, yeah, please go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I don't know why I was having problems unmuting myself, but from the bottom of my heart, Ken, thank you. I will be there with you. We have a community of people, and I know you have so many family members and friends who are here to support you. And I want to thank you for making the decision to want to tell Zachariah's story and to carry on his legacy. I think it's such an important thing and obviously very difficult. So your being here tonight is extraordinarily powerful and helpful, and will help guide us in this conversation. David, you want to take it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Todd and Mr. July. We just met right before you came on, and I just feel like as I'm looking at you on the screen and see myself as both a father and you're one. Thank you for your generosity to share your story, but also the courage to do so. And I'm also grateful that you will be staying with us to have share your insights with this conversation. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share what you shared before, and that is that Zachariah's ability to provide us with a bit of distance learning, distance teaching, though his spirit will continue to guide this conversation. So thank you again, Mr. July. And in that spirit, the whole notion of the Beer Summit is to bring different people from different perspectives along and focusing on a common challenge within the community. So this is definitely going to be something that, and it's such an appropriate way to start. And I think I mentioned before that I'm also a pastor. So I think that kind of God was in the details here, and that none of us could unmute ourselves after Ken finished his. And I think we needed that moment of silence, not just for Zachariah, but for the so many young people and not so young people who are finding themselves victims of violence that just seems to be senseless. So we're going to be talking about solutions. We're going to be talking about perspectives. And I'm going to ask Campbell now to unmute Dr. Johnson as I begin to introduce him, so we won't have any, can keep the thing moving forward. It's so frustrating to not be able to speak when you want to be able to speak. So I'm just going to, and since we're all on Zoom, I would urge folks to look up Dr. Jason Johnson, who is a professor and political analyst and public speaker. You've seen him, I've seen him on MSNBC. He's an author. He's a tenured professor at the School of Global Journalism and Communication at Morgan State in Baltimore. He's also the politics editor at The Root. And we had a conversation actually, my goodness, feels like it was yesterday. I think it might have been yesterday or Monday, about what was going to happen yesterday with the January 6th committee hearings. And Dr. Johnson, again, first, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to yield the mic to you to share your perspective. Certainly, Mr. July's very personal sharing, and I'm gonna call it a testimony, does frame some things. And I happen to see you in your Zoom box were as enraptured in terms of focus as I was. So please, would you just share your perspectives, particularly from a national perspective, as to some of the things that we're dealing with around this issue around violence?
So first, I want to express my condolences to Mr. July. I'm not a father. I'm somebody's kid. And I cannot imagine the loss that you're going through, and my heart goes out to you and your family and everybody else that knew your son. And I just hope there's nothing that can replace that pain. I just hope that whatever you and your family believe in can provide you with some sort of guidance as you go through this time, because I can't imagine what you're going through.
Thank you.
The theme for today is we're talking about sort of gun violence sparked by white nationalism and white supremacy. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then of course leave time for other people so we can have a larger conversation at the end. What I didn't mention when I talked earlier this week to David and Todd is that I knew today, in addition to being the day after a January 6th hearing talking about white nationalist groups and their use of guns and violence to try and overthrow the country, but today is also the 7-year anniversary of the death of Sandra Bland. If you don't remember, Sandra Bland was 28 years old. She's on the road going down to get a job at her alma mater, got pulled over. Cop was hostile to her. She was thrown in jail on a bogus minor traffic violation, and she was found hung in her jail cell on July 13th of 2015. And the reason that sort of stuck with me is because, well, it's not about gun violence per se. It is about white nationalist violence. And it's about state-sponsored violence. And it's about vigilante violence against Black people and Black bodies in this country. And how, in a very disturbing way, in a relatively short period of time, we've become almost inured and desensitized to what arguably, even when I was growing up as a kid, would have been spectacular moments of violence. A woman hung in a jail cell. As a kid who grew up in the 90s, that would have been on the news every single day. That would have been like Rodney King. It took a 9-minute snuff film of George Floyd being murdered for even political leaders outside of local leaders to do anything about it. So when we talk about gun violence coming from white supremacy, we have to put that in the context that we have a country that has consistently fed itself on violence against Black people. And not just violence against Black people in the form of guns, but violence against Black people, not just in the physical act, but also in the lack of consequences against the perpetrators of that violence, which is another form of violence, right? Somebody punches you in the face, that's one bit of violence. When they walk away and nothing happens, that's more violence. That's emotional, psychic, and legal violence. And so when we look at where we are as a country right now, and we look that we're currently having hearings at a federal level talking about the fact that you have a large number of white people who, under the guise of political concern, are willing to use guns in any shape, way, or form they see fit in order to take control of this country. And whether that manifests itself in a young white man killing a bunch of people in Buffalo, or a young white man shooting a bunch of people in the grocery store, or a young white man murdering 9 people in the church, including a very dear friend of mine. White people have always been able to use guns to work out whatever dissatisfaction that they have not received at the ballot box. Certain arrogance to that our country has always accepted, that you could gun down, as a Black person, you could gun down somebody in the street over, $25 in their wallet, and you're more likely to face consequences than if you're a white person that shoots up an entire grocery store. What concerns me most about this, and what I'll sort of be adding to the conversation, is not that we have seen an increase in white nationalist violence. The greatest amount of domestic terrorism is from white people. We've just had a study that came out last week about the demographics of the people who are leading these movements, who are part of January 6th. 93% of the people involved in January 6th are white. Over 50% of the people are from or CEOs or business owners. Over 30% of them are former military or law enforcement. And the greatest indicator of somebody involved in the January 6th attack is somebody from a county that Joe Biden won in the 2020 election that has also seen a decrease in its white population over the last decade. So we know where this is coming from. And the question that we really have to face in this country right now is, if we're not going to get rid of the guns, then we have to do something about the people who are using the guns. And if we're not going to do something about the people who are using the guns, then we got to get rid of the guns. If we do not, we are settling in for a cycle of violence, the last of which we saw about 100 years ago.
So. Wow, that's sobering, enlightening and informative, but so sobering. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and I'm also grateful to you that you'll be able to stay with us for the conversation. And folks, hopefully we gave a little bit of ground rules before that. Our friends and colleagues of Global Citizen, they're monitoring the chat. We'd ask you to put, if you have questions, into that chat. But what we're trying to do, at least initially, is to frame the issue, to provide some information. But again, as we do that, this will definitely become more dialogue. I have questions myself, but I want to make sure that we get all the information out and then be able to open it up for questions that we can have this dialogue. One thing that I'm always grateful for around the Beer Summit is, and I think that we talked about the humanness of conversation. I think Dr. Johnson alluded to the fact that, how things get resolved. And I would just remind folks, if you all recall, that just recently here in Pennsylvania, one of the leading candidates for the U.S. Senate talked about the Second Amendment that empowers all the others. Again, this notion of my right and my weapon, if you will, to be able to do what I think I need to do going forward. So with that, let me introduce Asa Khalif as our third panelist. And Asa is someone who I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with. I had served at one time as the general manager of 900 AM WRD, which is Pennsylvania's only Black-owned talk radio station. So I've had the honor of seeing him and having dialogue with him. Again, I would urge folks who are online to check out his bio and certainly his social media. He's been a racial justice organizer and activist from the time that he was a teenager. And I can identify with that as someone who's been born and raised in Philadelphia. He's been an outstanding and vocal critic of things like police brutality and shootings, particularly. He had recently run for city council, but he also has a personal connection in that his own cousin, Brandon Tate Brown, had been a victim of shooting. So I'd like to yield the floor to Asa, and also Asa was good enough to bring some other voices into this conversation. So Asa, I'm not only going to yield to you, but when you feel it appropriate to then introduce the other folks who will add to this conversation, that will be great. And you've seen the folks folks who are on the call and on the Zoom can see the message that says, as we open for question and answers, we're going to try to moderate that so we can keep things focused. So again, Asa, good to be virtually in your presence. And would you please share your insights?
Thank you very much, David. I always call you my brother. I truly appreciate you. And thank you, Todd, and for everyone that's participating today at the Beer Summit this evening. I first would like to say to Mr. July, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to him and his family on the loss of their son.
Thank you.
I truly understand in terms of losing someone that's close, not a son, but I do know how it feels to lose a loved one to gun violence, especially when it was unnecessary and senseless. And you're in my prayers, and my entire family will keep you up in prayer. And I'm so sorry for your loss, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to tackle this, if I can, on two different just the topic alone, because there's a whole lot going on with this topic. Gun violence triggered by white supremacy. I want to break it down and say that, first of all, Black and brown bodies have never been safe here in America, ever. We've always been targeted. But I feel that we have lost generationally the spirit of family and the spirit of bonding together and looking out for one another. I'm looking at a lot of our young people who are just completely lost. I grew up, I'm a little older. I grew up where if your parents were not there, you had a godmother step in, you had an auntie step in, you had the neighborhood, your next door neighbor, your pastor, the coach, the teachers. We had a sense of community. We've lost that. We've lost the sense of community because now we're afraid to talk to our young people. We're afraid to have that conversation with them. We're afraid to interject ourselves, to diffuse conflicts that before it even gets to the streets, before it even gets to a party where innocent people are shot down. And we need to get to that. And I don't believe in a white savior. I'm sorry. I'm going to say how I feel because I'm extremely emotional about this. I've lost a cousin through police violence. I've lost a cousin through street violence. And, and I've seen friends and family members, innocent people, on their way to work. Someone 19 years old should be able to go with his friends to a party without being shot. And the fact that you left this brother, Zachariah, in the street like he was nothing. And I'm just so happy, Brother Kent, that you, as a father, as a Black father, said, I'm going to let you know who my son was. He's more than just a body laying in a damn street. Mm-hmm. And even in all that pain, and I can hear it in your voice, and, I feel you, brother. But I'm so happy that the ancestors gave you the strength to say, this is my son. I don't care how many other bodies you disregard, but you're not going to disregard this brother because he had people who loved him. And I think we feel all, as Black people, we feel that. We've lost a lot of people in our families and our friends and our neighbors. So I'm not looking for white people and white establishments to save our communities. I'm relying on individuals like Brother Dave. I'm relying on individuals who are on this chat, even Brother Kent.
Yes.
I'm relying on our community because at the end of the day, that's all we had to rely on. When we were enslaved, we had each other to rely on, and we've lost that. We've lost a sense of togetherness. We've lost it. We've gained a spirit of selflessness. We've gained a spirit of individualism. We've gained a spirit of just not giving a damn about each other. And that's not where we come from. That's not how we were raised. And I'm saying, if we're going to deal with this gun violence, we have to start with each other. We have to fill the gap when the parents are absent. You have children, Black children, who are being charged with murder for killing an elder. Where were the parents? And if the parents were absent, we fill in that gap. We don't expect law enforcement to fill in our gap. Their job is to police us. Our job is to love our children, even if they're not ours.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way, and I'm going to leave it because I'm extremely emotional about this, but white supremacy, that spirit of gun and hate and killing has always been a part of those racist ass white folks. I'm sorry, it's always been a part of it. And for us to adapt that type of thinking, that type of spirit is wrong. Because that's not how we were raised. That's not how we come from. That's not where we come from. We come from a spiritual base. Mm-hmm. We come from a principle base. And our ancestors are not pleased. We don't have to adapt to white supremacy. We must crush it. And how we crush it is starting to protect and love our children. That's how we start crushing it and building them like Brother Kent built with his son. Mm-hmm. To know who you are, and to stand in that truth and be proud of it. Thank you. I'm done.
No, thank you, Asa. And sorry, not sorry, brother. There's no need to apologize for how you feel. It strikes us all in the same way that it is. So I appreciate the passion that you bring to this conversation. I know that there are also some young people that you've also brought along with you.
Yes. Sorry, I don't know. Excuse me, David. I don't know if they were on. Brother, my youngins, Brother Maurice and Brother Germ. If they're on, I know they were on earlier. I don't know if they got disconnected, but if they're on, I would love for them to speak. These are young people who are living that experience day in and day out. So if they're on, I would like to yield some of my time for them to speak. I see Brother Germ.
Yeah.
Okay, Germ.
Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Sorry, I'm on a train right now. Asa, I want to echo exactly what you said. Pretty much it goes back to the sense of community. And there's a lot of people growing up without like a father figure and everything. And I think that the elders like really have to teach them some of the younger people the ways, I feel like. But I think that's one of the biggest parts of this, knowing that like the police isn't really the ones that's going to train the younger generations. The police is actually just a facet in let me change my camera. There we go. Police are just like a facet within like the white supremacy like context. So white supremacy, if you look at it as a religion, which it kind of is, it's a belief system. And the first part of that religion is that you have to believe that Black people are less than, and there's a lot of people in this country who look at ourselves as like being less. We got to look at ourselves as being equal. Really, that next generation is the biggest key to that. Like, it's not worth taking away someone else's life because this person is just as human as the people we weren't going to kill. You know what I mean? Our mothers, our fathers, our police officers, you know what I mean? It goes back to the worth of someone's life. And obviously we know racism is a systematic thing. We may not be able to change the system, but at least we can change individual beliefs. So that's pretty much all I have to say. It is our responsibility to see this thing as our community. So that's all I have to say on that. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing. And I know you're on the train, so if you can hang with us, that would be great. I see Maurice has also been pinned. Maurice, you should be unmuted if you wouldn't mind sharing your views as well.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you, Maurice.
All right. Well, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I feel as though it goes with the parents in the house. I think it like started probably from the 80s and 90s when they started bringing the guns into our neighborhoods and we started getting easy access to them. And I did know a couple experiments myself to see what is triggered us with the violence and everything. I remember one night around 3 a.m, I was walking, two guys, and I live in West Philly. So with two guys, one guy had an SK on his left side of his arm. So it was like 3 a.m. So I'm walking, I said, should I walk in the street or am I walk on the pavement? And a lot of people say that's a dangerous thing to do. So I decided to do it. So as I was walking by, they put the gun on their right side because he must have been right-handed. But when I walked, I said, hey, what's going on, y'all? They said, what's up? And they kept going. So that showed me right there that even though a lot of these brothers with guns, as I took it, they a little bit more scareful with the guns than we think they are. And I think sometimes subconsciously in the back of their mind, they thinking they need the guns. Now we all know where the guns come from. They ain't no way you gonna buy SK from the store. I didn't at this point in time, I didn't know guns were still getting in our neighborhood like that. That was a big gun he had on his head. So then it goes about the way, you know, we raising our kids. You know, the music got a lot of influence on us as like young parents or adults. And we start raising our kids, brothers and sisters. And we start being cool at home and they start getting influenced by it. A lot of these parents start really telling their kids, this is how you get that money. And then they get lost in the streets and everything. So when you're watching something on TV, all you want is the cars, the house. You see, you don't want to work your way up like a lot of people. They work from the bottom, work their way up. They want it quicker. So they go out there and they do what they feel they do what they got to do. If they don't understand, if you just work for it, the pensions and all that. Now, we got a lot of things getting lost in transition the last 2 years because of COVID. What happens is working people was getting their money, but people on the corner wasn't getting no money no more. So if they live 3 blocks away from somebody, they didn't care about the money they was making. But now everybody's scrambling for the pennies and dollars out there now. So $50 become a lot of dollars. $100 become a lot of dollars. Like I think y'all watched on the news when they pulled up in that white van a while ago and they all jumped out shooting. They wasn't shooting at working people. They shooting at other people because they want that corner up Germantown because they thought they had no other options to get money now. So now it's like the youngest eating the young now. They getting desperate for that cash. So they all killing each other, shootings. And that's why you see it's so bad throughout the way. But you wonder where are these guns coming from? They didn't have all these guns years ago. But you always know when it's chaos, that's when the man slips in and do what he do best. Pull up with that one truck full of guns, or he just leave a parked car with a trunk in the hood. No, somebody going to look at it. I've been around here a couple of times. You're walking 3, 4 in the morning, taking a walk. It's happened to be a trunk, just happened to be up on a dark block when nobody out there, but it happened to be always up. I'm not a curious person, but I'm also not a dumb person. That's what they do. They come in our neighborhoods, park the car, leave the trunk a little bit open, leave the doors unlocked, leave the light on, you can see the doors unlocked. The gun's in there. You know, they want us to terminate ourselves so badly for so long. It ain't working. They feel it's the perfect opportunity time to do it. So the violence is really coming from a lot of them young kids out there right now don't have no money. They're not educated enough to think, go work. Because if y'all would have worked, y'all would have got some money during the pandemic. All the working people got money. They didn't get money. Nobody could buy the drugs no more. Then it's not about drugs anymore. It's about, are we going to take these corners? Because one corner is not enough no more to survive off. But they need like 4 or 5 of them. And that's why you're seeing all the shootings the way it's going on. The innocent people is getting shot. But they really targeting the people that's in the game because they fighting over turf out there right now. And it remind you of the 90s right now, early 90s or early 80s with all the violent shootings. And that's all it's about right now. Because once they take a corner, the other guys will come back a couple days later, shoot them up and take the corner. It's more about the lack of knowledge. But, you know, I was just talking to somebody about it. It's 2022. So I think I'm more annoyed that we've been talking this for the last 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of the same thing, the same marches, the same speaking over and over. Like it's like continual process. Like nothing really is changing. And the youth right now, with COVID, they really gone. I don't think we can do. Mike could say something, but majority of them, they stuck in that lifestyle of all that chaos that's in. And some of them what they were doing was for George Floyd got teared all down. Some also saw it was opportunity to, you know, get that money. Like they did with the money, was an opportunity to get a little sneaking and come up during chaos. But that's what it's really coming down to. When you walk around certain corners, you see guys on the corner, you walk through them, excuse me, good brothers, they don't say nothing to you. They're not worrying about you. They worrying about the enemies they going to war with over them blocks that they already shot up a couple of days ago. So they more on edge out there than a little thing. So,
David, I'm sorry, Maurice, because I know we're up for time. I just want, if you can, because you're probably the youngest one on this panel right now. As a person, as a young man of color in Philadelphia, how do you navigate avoiding violence, and how does that affect you on your day-to-day moves?
All right. Well, actually, I've been shot 4 times before a couple of years ago. Got caught in the shootout down in North Philly. When I lived there to see my godmom. So what I did is when it's chaos, you got to go to work and go home. You got to stay out the way. You know, you got there for a little bit. When it get around dark, you know what's going to happen. Like you already aware how bad it is out there. So I avoid riding my bike. I avoid riding my cars, certain gas stations, because you know what it is all on the news. They're waiting for you in the gas station. They're waiting for you at certain lights. They like what you got and everything. So you just got to tone down the way you're dressing, take the jewelry, take everything off, tone it down, go to work, come home. That's all you can do right now. You really can't do what we were doing before, going to see friends in your old neighborhood. You can't do that right now. So to avoid it, I work, come home. That's just how it is right now. Is it cool? No, not really. You don't go downtown, but you can't do too much shopping because you're not driving in there. They're on the sub waiting for you, or they down on the L. So the best thing you can do, like I told everybody, is when I talk to people, they just go home and go in the house. Like on my block, everybody be outside, but once they get around like 7:38, all the kids, everybody on the porch goes in the house. We have no choice right now.
If I may, Maurice, and I really appreciate this perspective. And I think that, and hopefully you'll be able to stay on. And I also wanted to thank Brother Jim as well in terms of sharing this perspective, because it actually gets to one of the questions that some of the folks who are on the Zoom have had. And I'm going to also invite Dr. Johnson and others to join in this response. And that is, it seems like we're all hitting on, and I understand, I hate to say this, Brother Maurice, because you said, how long since it's going on. I happen to be a survivor of a drive-by when I was 13. So this, and I'm way past 13. I mean, you're talking 40 years later that this thing is. But one of the questions in the chat was asking that if people in power, particularly white people in general, only make changes from self-interest, which I think kind of gets to the point Maurice was making about where do these guns come from. They're talking about systemic changes or systematic racism, that, as Brother Asa had mentioned, and Dr. Johnson mentioned this as well, in terms of looking, how can we hope to make change in the conditions? And those of you who are on the call, some of the folks who are seeing it, who may, like myself, live and work in Philadelphia, knowing that there's been, for years trying to get control of the gun laws. That's one thing. But I think if you wouldn't mind, whoever would like to take the first cut at it, whether it's Dr. Johnson, Asa, and certainly Brother July, I know you're still on this, kind of looking at how do we look at appealing to people's self-interest. Asa talking about self-love, which I completely agree with, and I'm as emotional as you are on that. How then, though, can we use self-interest to move the needle, to reform some of these things, reduce the proliferation of guns? And just as Brother Maurice said, that truck that's in the middle of the abandoned block at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's also an outgrowth of the systemic racism that allows the proliferation of some of these things to happen. So whoever would like to take it first, and I'm going to ask Campbell to pin the folks who are talking so we can see them outside of the Zoom.
Well, I'll start sort of nationally, and then you guys can sort of talk specifically about Philly. I think when we're talking about guns, it's there's different self-interest for different communities, right? Like if you're talking about Black folk in Pittsburgh or Philly or Cleveland, or I'm in Atlanta right now, gun violence is often stemming from a lack of material need, and lack of material need leads to sort of emotional and spiritual needs, right? When people don't have a good education, when their schools treat them like crap, you don't have a damn grocery store, when your families are split up through, petty arrests and stuff like that. I mean, those are material needs, and therefore people seek outlets. So appealing to that self-interest is a matter of, as Ace has mentioned, using the resources at our disposal to love and take care of our own community. That's the greatest way. It's difficult, it's long, it's a slog. The improvements may only be incremental, but that's how you end up handling gun violence within a specific Black community in a particular area. If we're talking about the sort of larger theme of what do we do about gun violence in America, which is in large part stemming from white nationalist movements and white men, well, then we have to look at things differently, and we have to argue in terms of not self-interest, but in breaking the system itself. Because the system, and I'm not the only person to say this, everybody said this, everybody's heard a version of this. The system's working the way it was supposed to. This is the kind of violence that white people have always perpetuated in this country. And, 10, 12 years ago, I mean, it didn't stop after Columbine. It didn't, the myth that we used to have in the 90s was like, you know what, if these drive-bys and stuff start happening to white people, they'll change. No, white kids in elementary schools get slaughtered now. Politicians don't care. They vote for the same politicians who want to support it. Steve Scalise, white Republican, got shot at the Republican Democratic baseball game a couple years ago. The guy's still not against gun control. So you can't appeal to self-interest to a larger collective people whose self-interest is they would literally rather have their country go to hell as long as they know that Negroes will go to hell faster. So you cannot appeal to the self-interest of people invested in white supremacy. All you can do is hope to protect yourself. Now, if you're somebody who believes in reforming the system, I am not a reformer, so I wouldn't be that person. I'm a police abolitionist. I think we need to abolish policing as it exists. I say it on the air. Some people challenge, push it back. It doesn't work. Policing doesn't work. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to on paper. It may work in terms of serving white supremacy, but it doesn't work the way it's supposed to on paper. But if you're somebody who actually believes in working through the government system to get these things done, then you have to be absolutely single voter committed to voting against increases in police budgets. You have to be committed against voting for anybody who wants to compromise with police unions. You have to be voting against anybody who is in favor of loosening or lessening gun laws. And you have to be screaming and yelling and in the face of any elected official, any party under any circumstances that is not in favor of a massive, massive reduction in access to guns. Because America's never had a lack of crazy people or lack of racist people or lack of evil people. But we used to not have as many guns. And a racist who has to go into a store and stab people is not nearly as dangerous as a racist who can go in with an AK-47 and shoot 30 people before they're able to get to the checkout line.
Wow. Powerful. Asa, I know you wanted to comment as well. And I would also ask, Asa, because then I know you, when running for city council, being part of what could reform a system. I mean, your choice as to whether or not you want to even talk about that. But I think Dr. Johnson raises some very, very powerful points about reform. What are we trying to do in terms of the change that we're trying to make? Because some of the changes, Asa, that you mentioned are how we look and treat each other. That's something that has power of agency today, right now. So whatever comments you would like to share, Asa, go right ahead.
Yes, I agree with Brother Johnson 100%. I want to bring it back to a local perspective. We have to be the change that we want. We have to be the change that we need. And I say this to some of my younger family members, even some of my young people. Black Panther, Superman, Wonder Woman. These people are not coming to your community to save you. And I say that because we honestly believe in a political superhero. And you have a lot of folks, even now, as we enter the eve of a new mayor and who's going to run for mayor. You hear it now where politicians are speaking recklessly, talking about bringing back policies that have harmed our people, have harmed Black and brown people, and has been proven. You have some talking about bringing back stop and frisk. That type of division is not going to help gun violence in our community. We have to start building coalitions. And I've sat at tables many times, David, as you possibly know, and Todd will know. I've sat with people who I do not like me and I don't like them. But we have one thing in common, and that's our community. And if you're about helping our community, helping our young people, bringing and lifting them up, I'll sit with anyone to have that conversation and to bring something productive out of that conversation. Again, we have to make it local. We have to build coalitions within ourselves. Clergy, and this is not directed to a certain clergy member that's on the panel, because I know of his work and I know of his his resume and so on in the community. But, I've said to many pastors, preachers are going to have to come out of that church and out of those pulpits. You're going to have to really, at this point, put your faith, where your mouth is at this point. You've got to come out of those churches and come on those corners to these young people. And don't be afraid to work with brothers. We work with brothers who come out of the prison. We call them OGs. We call them old heads. We call them big brothers. We call them some legends because that's what they were on the streets. A lot of our people that we looked up to were drug dealers. And they watched out for us when we were in school and make sure you stay in school. They watched out for the quote unquote good kids, but we want them to, because we can pretty much take care of ourselves, we want those brothers to, and they're doing it now, to come and speak with these young people who are quote unquote wilding in the streets, because there's nothing more effective than a brother who has done years, went in at 18, coming out at 60 or coming out at 50, doing hard time. We're talking about real hard time, not something up State Road. We talking about real hard time. And we're gangsters in the streets. And we approach those brothers. We have a prison ministry within a group of activists that we've had for over 8 years, where we enlist the help of those brothers, because some of us on this panel may not be able to go into the certain communities and have a conversation with brothers who are really out in the streets and about that life. So we, again, need to build coalitions, and it may not be politically correct. It may not, we don't have a choice to be bougie at this point, or who we want to combine, align ourselves with. The goal must be, again, to make sure that our community is safe. And the only way we can start that, especially with the guns, is if we build these coalitions. And it's going to take everybody. Everyone's going to have to come in and activists. And you see that now, because we're at a point now where we have no choice but to work together at this point. And we're putting our differences aside, and we're working together, and we got to take it block by block. We're not going to solve it, in a day, but if we can solve one shooting, if we can diffuse that, then we'll take that victory. It's going to take smaller victories to attain and achieve larger victories.
So Asa, if I can jump in, David, as well. My son was shot outside a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 home, right? And so when you think about the change that's taken place in Philadelphia, there's an anticipated revenue stream, multiple revenue streams, right? And that's being threatened. So I agree that there needs to be coalitions. Part of it are the people who are anticipating all of this money coming into the quote unquote new Philadelphia. I also like what Marie said, which is, look, this is stuff is out on the street, right? And these cars and trunks are just pop. I grew up down the Black Bottom, right? That's where I'm from. And so you understood, and I'm an old head, probably the oldest head on the screens right now. But I spent Friday nights and Saturday nights sitting on the floor, right? Because of the gun violence, the shooting. But there was a code that took place then, right? And so mothers and daughters and our seniors, Miss So and such, Mr. Sonny, you made sure nothing happened to them, right? This is something different. And I think it's something different because as we pull up, Jason, there's a larger thing afoot here, right? And that is, who cares about people, right? And so if you are made to understand in your school that you don't matter, if you're made to understand at your rec center that you don't matter, right? If you're made to understand during COVID, you get on that bus, you get to work because you don't matter, then you don't matter. And so how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make yourself matter? You've got something in your hand to make yourself matter. You've got Instagram to make yourself matter, right? Because that's what we've had. We had a 10-year-old, right? Videotaping. So all of these things, we need to put humanness back into it, because at 10, you shouldn't even think that it's a good idea to participate in killing somebody. But if you're told you don't matter, then nobody else matters.
That's
and you
right.
have a way to differentiate yourself. So this is complicated, but it's like, what's the metaphor they talk about, turning the Titanic? It's not going to happen on a dime, and it's not going to happen today, but it damn sure won't happen if nobody gets together and says, look, something's got to happen. David, Asa, Jason, Maurice, Todd, all of us are here. Now, what do we do? And who do we talk to with the people? And show me the budget. Show me where the money is going. And we need to insist upon those dollars going where it's going to make a difference, so that people are feeling like they're humans again. And yeah, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's too late for my 19-year-old son. His future is snuffed out. It's over for him. But I'll be damned if I will sit and be quiet and not do anything about that.
Absolutely. If I can take a little bit of facilitator privilege and ask Campbell, if you could start to just spotlight all the speakers so we can all be on the same screen at the same time. Dr. Johnson, Maurice, if Jem is still with us, that'd be great. But I do want to be honored some of the questions that were coming up in the chat. And I really appreciate it. You see this theme already starting to emerge. And Maurice had mentioned that he has been a victim of violence, and everybody who is everybody is touched by violence. I mean, and the question is that how then can we work together because I think what Brother July has shared, and which everyone has shared, there is no one answer. There are multiple answers. There's work to be done on the legislative front. There's work to be done on a personal front. Asa had mentioned the fact that here in Philadelphia, we're on the eve of a mayoral election. Political engagement is important. Dr. Johnson mentioned about that. And if I can borrow again from Dr. King's legacy, he was working on multiple fronts in terms of both from the faith perspective, the self-love perspective, the economic perspective. And I think that we all need to kind of think through some of those things. So again, if I could ask, those of us and who have suffered from violence, there are physical things that happen there. There are emotional things that happen there. But I would, whomever would like to talk about, because we are going to be talking about solutions. And again, I'm going to send this back out to the Zoom folks on the mosaic here, that if you have a question, put it in the chat, they'll get it to us. But let's talk about, those of us who are affected by violence. What are some of the things that we can do to move some of these things forward? So however you all would like to go. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that can overwhelm people is when they're hurt or they're upset or they're pained by these things, they want to do everything and then they burn out. And I'm always a big advocate of, you can make whatever kind of changes in whatever space you happen to be in, because not everybody is a marcher, and not everybody is a writer, and not everybody's a speech maker. So you find the thing that you can do, right? And have humility about that. Like, know the places you can go to be helpful. I love, it's funny when Ace was talking about having brothers who've done real time, right? And I've done community work before. I know where my voice does not matter. And I'm gonna go find somebody who can talk. One of the things I just mentioned, one of the things I always learn is, like, the more somebody talks about the time they did, the less time they did. Because I've worked with guys for 2 years, and one day at lunch, they casually mentioned, yes, I was in for 20 weeks. Wait, what? Because people who do real time don't talk about it. They're busy trying to recapture their lives. The dude who did a 6-month bid is going to be talking about like he was in Oz for 4 seasons, right?
Exactly.
That's my experience.
Exactly.
But I'll say this, in the individual ways that we can reach out. Dylan Roof killed one of my oldest friends. Clementa Pinckney, who was the pastor of Mother Emanuel, was one of my oldest friends. I met Clem right after college. I ran his campaign. We'd known each other for years. And we would text. I knew him, and he was Jen. And the day he was killed, I remember because I was in my apartment and I saw the news and I was watching The Equalizer with Denzel on Showtime. Like, I remember what I was watching and I saw the news flipping channels. I was like, yo, that's Clem's church. Hope he's okay. I'm just thinking like it was a shooting. And I found out, you know, my friend was killed and the cops offered him a damn hamburger. And the thing about it is, I'm not in South Carolina and I'm not, you know, I wasn't there. I can't be on the ground. I'm not an organizer. I wasn't an activist down there. But what I did and what I told my friends on television, on CNN, on MSNBC, is that when the public discourse began and when Lindsey Graham and Nikki Haley kept trying to say, oh, this was an attack on Christianity and we've got to do something about mental health, I got every single damn person I know, call every single producer I know. I was like, this was white supremacist violence, and that's what I'm going to say, and that's what we're all going to say, and we're going to hold that line because we're not going to let them turn this into a damn conversation about mental health and an attack on religion. Mm-hmm. That was my way of helping in the conversation. There were other people who could do other things. And so I always think of it, and we did. We kind of won that argument. Eventually, the people who were trying to flip this into an attack on Christianity, they were shut down. No one was credibly able to say that after about a week because we knew what Dylan Roof was about. So I give that example because, you know, I think we can all work in our own individual communities as fathers, as sons, as mothers and daughters in the way that we can help, whether you're a shop owner or you just got out, or you're trying to avoid going in. I think we can be humble and appreciative of the individual ways we can do work. And then frankly, for me, listen and be available. Because I'm always open to having people who know more than me ask me what I can do to help them. Because I may not be on the ground able to do something, but if I can amplify something, that's a way that I can participate. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. That's how I look at sort of problems.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dr. Johnson. And I would even say that, you know, everybody on this panel is your mere participation on this panel is part of how to engage. And I think that, you know, part of it, I think, AC, you were going to make a comment as well in terms of everybody can do something. Doing nothing will guarantee nothing will change. And it's part of that. And I love Dr. Johnson, the point you made about humility. You ain't got to be leading the parade in order to make it effective. Participate in the parade if that's what it takes. So if anybody wants to comment, go ahead. There are some other questions that have been posed in the chat that I can pose. But if anybody else wants to build on what Dr. Johnson's already shared, yeah, go ahead, Jeremy. We'll have to unmute you.
Yeah, I just want to say, so here in Philly, we got some organizations that literally will patrol our own communities. Organizations like, I got a list of them: Philly Truce, Town Watch, Partners and Peace, BMCC Philly, and it goes back to everyone may not be as confident, you know, going around the blocks at night, but at least I want to acknowledge that some people are actually going out of their way in front of the face of what could be a violent situation and making sure people get home at night and making sure kids come from school safely. There's an organization called Frontline Dads that do that. Yeah. So, you know, that's really up close and personal when we talk about non-violence. So there are some organizations literally at the face of this trying to stop it in a very tangible form, actually. So, you know, and it goes back to some people, you know, we may have to get the message out there. Some people kind of have to make them calls to producers and make sure the messaging is correct. And that's part of it too. And we shouldn't knock everybody's, you know, own participation. I'm having trouble with that one. With the movement, yes. Yeah. The movement has a lot of different facets. It's a body. So some people gonna have to be the mouth. Other people gonna have to be the toes, ears, feet, all of it.
Yep. Thank you for that, Jim. Appreciate it. One of the questions that came up in the chat kind of gets to some of the things that Jim's already shared, and that is that not only are there people on the front lines doing things and I think that, you know, I happen to be one of those folks that benefited from things like PAL and youth basketball, things that, so there are, and even, here in Philadelphia, they've been talking about, how important it had been to get the pools open and things of that nature. So I'd love to get anyone's viewpoint, either on a local or a national level, are some of the things that will keep our young people safer. Obviously, on a broader scale, looking at economic opportunities, things of that nature, quality education. I mean, this stuff is happening, and I forgot who on the panel shared it, in some areas, hotspots that have been divested and disinvested for years. But would love to get everyone's view on what are some of the things that we can do to, while we're trying to figure this out, to keep up some of our folks safe, and as we continue to move some things forward.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Maurice.
I remember a couple of years ago, I took this class at Penn. It was called Black Minds Matter class. And the professor was there talking about it. And he was talking about how young Black men don't take advantage of opportunities that's right in front of us. He said, it's all these colleges, it'd be free classes to the public to take, free things, free economic stuff, free stuff at like University of Penn got that Wharton class there they do once in a while, investment class. So the thing is, I think a lot of us, even though we got the technology, is more being unaware. That's all it's coming down to, unaware. Mm-hmm. Now, it is some pools open, because in South Philly, their pools are open in South Philly. Around up there, 3rd and Oregon, their pools are open, but not around here, they're not. So it really comes down to everything we can do, we know what we need to do. It's just gotta get enough people that want to do it. You need at least 10, a good 15 people that that's dedicated to helping the community out to get done. And if you decide to open up a rec center, what you're gonna need, it's sad to say, you're gonna need security there. You're gonna get the type of people that's coming in there, that's not coming in there. 2 different neighborhoods gonna come in there. They may laugh and joke, but it's always about when they leave these rec centers. Mm-hmm. Now you can make sure you can walk everybody to the bus stop, make sure everybody get it, but there's only but so much you can do. And that's when it's really come back to, to come back at home again. Mm-hmm. Just come back to the discipline at home. It goes back to how the parents are raising the kids. They're younger, having kids, and they're raising like their brothers and sisters.
Wow, no doubt.
That's what it's coming down to, because we can do everything we want to do. Them kids that go back home to a mother, it's probably like 33, like 5 kids, one 18 already, one day in their 20. One 17, one 16, and they don't look at their mother as a mother. Because a lot of these mothers look so young to be older, they don't see them as a grown woman. As if when we grew up, you look at your mother, she looked like she was 30. She had you could see it in her. Now these mothers looking even younger as the kids, so the kids don't look at their mother as the way they should look at them, as the way I grew up looking at my mother. And that's what it's coming down to. Like we got a lot of levels here. They say we got the neighborhoods, I'm talking on MSNBC, which I've seen him a couple of times on there. You got Asa doing everything he could do. You got the one on the, can think of his name right now. My best name on the train. He's speaking right now, doing anything he could do. We try and do it all in different levels, but just when the kids hear the motivation, they hear it, they got to go back home. They don't hear the motivation.
Right. Absolutely.
Mom and then popping pills, smoking, drinking, partying. Yeah. Young boy go right back outside.
And I think,
for years.
I think, I'm sorry, you finished, Maurice? My bad.
I'm done.
We got to get to the root of all this. First of all, our children at this point in time, at this present day, lack hope and lack empathy. When they see themselves in the mirror, they don't see themselves. Okay. They don't love themselves, number one, because it hasn't been taught to them and hasn't been demonstrated to them. Our children at the end of the day need love and support. And I've always said that, we can always dish out the discipline and at times, yes, that's necessary. It's necessary. You have to suffer the consequences for your actions. But we're trying to get as adults and young adults to a point where before it gets to that point, you understand, before it gets to having to turn your children in, before it gets to the violent act, before it even gets to the fact that you're out at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. You know,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
have to take, you know, we have to get back to, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, we are.
Mhm.
We have a moral responsibility to take care of each other. And this is a chant that we always say that came from our sister Estada Shakur. And we say this after every protest that we have. You know, we must love and respect one another, because at the end of the day, we have nothing to lose but our chains. The violence have chained all of us.
Wow.
up.
Wow.
Maurice talked about having to not have a life. What Maurice described is not a life. And we know that our white counterparts don't live like that in certain neighborhoods. They can go and be as free as they want to be. We're free, but yet we're still in bondage. And the fact that we're still in bondage in our own community is motivation enough for us to, again, to build that coalition, you know. And I always put a spiritual base to this, Brother David. You know, God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of love and power, joy, and a sound mind. So when you go, and one thing about these young people, and my young people who are on here participating know, when you real about and consistent about your advocacy, when you walk up to them brothers, they can tell. They can sniff you out if you're a fake on some fake crap. You know what I'm saying? But when they see you in the community, the difference is why we have so much power and pull in our communities, because we never left our communities.
Right. Right.
We never left our communities. We know the Mrs. So-and-so who lost a child. We don't have to wait for the news to find out where their address is. We know. We are consistent. And I think because we're visible. And now this is a time where, and you see it now, where activists are joining in with parents such as Brother Ken, who's lost his son. You know, we're coming together. He's not an activist, but now we're advocates, you understand, for our children. We don't necessarily go to church every day. I came out of the Pentecostal Holiness Church. I said, when I was 18, that was it for me. But I guarantee you the principles that I learned in those institutions have stuck with me. So we're able to go and invite a reverend such as Brother David into our conversations, working together. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's so important. Our young people, we've become afraid of our young people. My aunt used to say, she raised 3 boys. They were like 6'5". She said, I'd be damned I'm going to be afraid of anything that I had. Anything that I gave birth to. And my crazy Aunt Ann trust me, she made the character Medea look like something straight out of Disney. She didn't play no games. You know, I was raised by strong Black women. You know, they didn't have to put their hands on us. They gave a look. And when I told you, we get a look, but it was a respect thing that was passed on from generation to generation. We didn't talk back to our big mamas. You understand?
Absolutely.
We didn't talk back to our parents, but that was raised from the cradle, you know, from birth. And I think a lot of and Germ hit on it, we're trying to be friends with our children. You can be a comfort to your child. You can be a parent. Got to be a parent first, you know, and then the friendship part will come in. But you can't be partying with your friend, with your children, and expect them to have that level of respect, you know. But it really just goes back down again to we live in these neighborhoods, we invest in these neighborhoods, and we can't be afraid to cash in on our investment. And we have to invest in our children. We've stopped investing in them. We become afraid. And you shouldn't be afraid. You were there when they were born. Now, how are you going to be afraid of them now? You know, and they know if you're just talking jive or if you're truly trying to have their best interests at heart. We just need to, at the end of the day, we have to put that message out there that we have to love and support our young people because they need it desperately. And we're the only ones that can give it.
Absolutely. One thing you all may be seeing, those who are on the Zoom a bit larger, that there have been comments that are coming in that we're just not going to be able to get into. But please look at it. There's some phenomenal insights that are being shared in the chat, just to be able to see the perspective that is being shared, as well as reacting to what's been shared here with the panelists. One thing I want to look to do, and we knew this was going to happen. This is such a deep topic that we're going to run out of time. So what I want to be able to do is I want to allow all the folks who've spoken to give like a 1-minute wrap up, if that's okay. And what I'd like to do is, if I may, again, take a little bit of facilitator privilege. I'd like to start with Maurice, and then from Maurice to Jeremy. I say you as Jeremy, but I hear you as brother Jim. So however you want to identify, and they will unmute you. So Maurice, if you wouldn't mind giving us kind of like a 1 minute wrap up, then I'm going to go to Jeremy, then we'll go into our other panelists in that succession. So go ahead, Maurice.
I will say that the only thing I didn't like about the COVID, that it killed my social work motivation that I was doing with the University of Pennsylvania. We have a resource center at the on Germantown, right over Leon. And people just coming there, we have them free IDs, help them get their jobs, houses. We all have resources to give to the community. And without doing that, it kind of, I put all that a lot of us down because I couldn't do what I liked to do best. And two, I was on the board at the DA office. We were talking about the juvenile system and where it starts from. And the DA office on the board, we was talking about it starts at home. It says that we got to really focus more at home. We got to catch when they're a little younger. We got to reach when they're a little younger and let them know that it's better opportunities out here. It's right there on the wall. It's right in front of you. And you got something it got to be brought to them. That's how I look at it. We got to catch it a little earlier than we catching it now. We catching it when they come home. And you already know what they know. They stuck now. It's like their feet in concrete. You can't get it out. We got to catch them while they're in mud. You can still move their feet around. It's more than what we know. And like, it's been going on for so long now. The white man had a good system of slavery because we still talking about this right now. They mastered it with us, and we still had all the smartness and knowledge we got. We can't defeat it. So they got us good. Yeah. It's hard, but we get it done, though. We get it done. So that's all we got to say. We just can't give up on the youngins. We got to really try.
Absolutely. And we may have lost Brother Asa, but he'll hopefully come back on, because one thing, Maurice, kind of the point that you were alluding to is that we got to be able to break from the chains, because you don't see the chains, but you're in prison already. And that starts with how we can do some of the things that you've already suggested. So thank you for that. Brother Jeremy, would you like to go with your 60-second wrap up? I think you need to be unmuted if Campbell can unmute you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to try to speak really fast because I got a lot to kind of get through that I heard. I want to first thing say that I want to like say something kind of, I don't know why people keep kind of bringing up these social things for like our kids, because the kids in rural communities have nothing to do, right? And this gun violence stuff isn't quite happening on that level. There's other stuff we know, other crimes and stuff, but kids, good kids left alone, still usually do relatively good things. You know what I mean? And I don't want to make it seem like boredom is the reason why we have like so much violence out here. I want to be very clear about that, because we'll get into a mindset that if we make just enough social programs, maybe then we'll stop the gun problem. And that's not really the case at all. And I just wanted to say that. Second, I just want to say that it goes back to the community thing. Us not only loving ourselves, but hating what's wrong. So some of the stuff in our music, some of the mantras, we gotta shun that. Really, we gotta actually actively hate that type of behavior. And the third thing I want to say is that a lot of this stuff is economics, and without good economics, produces horrible, violent situations like we got going on. And that's all I want to say. You can follow my work on Instagram at germ.griffin and on Twitter, germtwix. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you, Germ. Appreciate it. We're going to try to get that into the chat as well. So if we can go in this order, Asa, Dr. Johnson, and then let's end with the word we started with Brother Kent, July. So Asa, if you wouldn't, and I also need to give some space in for our host with Todd to have some closing remarks. So Asa, go right ahead.
Yes, I'll be very brief. Again, I truly believe that we cannot give up on each other. We cannot give up on our community. We just have to invest in our community and believe that we're going to get a return in our investment. Again, a lot of things have been said. I'm not going to repeat it. I think the words were very powerful and the discussion was very powerful. But at the end of the day, I want us to make a commitment that we will at least reach out to one young person and build that type of coalition bridge with them. Because at the end of the day, we have the power to stop a lot of this gun violence. We can stop it before it even gets to the streets. And because we know they live in our neighborhood, they live on our block, we can stop it before it even gets to that point. And we cannot allow our fear to do that. We have to love and support our children. And that action that will be shown to them can empower them to love themselves at the end of the day. So I thank you again, Todd. Thank you, David. Thank you for the guests. Again, you're in my prayers, Brother Kent. And your words were very, very inspirational because we're hurting too. You know, we're hurting for you and we're dealing with our own scars from this gun violence as well. And to see your courage and your bravery in your pain has inspired all of us. And we just want to thank you. I thank you personally for that. And Brother Johnson, you know, your words is always revolutionary to me. So we'll continue this conversation when it's unfiltered.
Jason, would you mind go ahead with that?
He knows what I mean. I'll say this. I just want to add, because I don't want to be repetitive. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I tend to be a skeptic of conversations in general. I tend to be angry because I'm like, people are like, oh, we had a conversation. It's not. No, sometimes conversation is meaningful because it's catharsis. Because sometimes it's important to just hear that there's like-minded people out there and that you're not crazy in what you're doing and what you're thinking in your individual space. One thing I want to add to this, we've talked a little bit about children, we talked about parents and everything else like that. I think one of the things that we can always argue for, also from a policy perspective, because that's the sort of global thing, is we do not have a country above and beyond the abuse to Black people. We do not have a country that, from a policy standpoint, really supports parents. It just doesn't. Parenting is really hard in this country. And so when we talk about kids, bad kids are a result of overstressed, overworked parents. Why are we still fighting for 3 months off? 3 months off to raise a human being when a kid is born. When we look at a mother who's got 5 kids by 4 different dudes, well, the question should be, well, what were the circumstances? Did she have access to healthcare? Did she have access to abortion? Did she have access to prenatal care? Who are the guys? Why are they not paying? There's so many different things that go into it. Parents are not often supported. And then they're blamed consistently for not being able to, in the 8 hours a day they might have with their son or daughter from 3 p.m. until 9 when they go to bed. And then we blame them for what that kid may do with the 14 other hours of influences they have in their lives. And you can do everything right, and your children can still be taken away by violence, taken away by a corrupt system, or taken away by all sorts of other influences. So we have to show some love and support and appreciation for parents, most of whom are trying the best in the most flawed way they can be. And we need to show love and support for those people too, because I promise you, every bad kid got an overworked, overstressed parent or 4 that's been trying to look after them, and those people need love too.
Absolutely. So with that, let's end where we began. Kent, if you wouldn't mind giving comments, and then I want to thank everybody for your vulnerabilities and your insights. Then we'll hand it back to Todd to close us out. Go ahead, Kent.
So I'm going to say right? Everyone who has spoken, this is right? There are solutions in what everyone has contributed here. And I have a village. My wife has a village. My other son has a village that is supporting us. So Dr. Johnson, to what you've said, Asa, what you've said as well, that you need to be able to show support and love to children and to parents. I'm fortunate to have that. Our village has never been touched by a murder before. Certainly not by the murder of a 19-year-old. It is raw, it stings, it hurts everyone. And we need to feel that so that we do something about it. And so Dr. Johnson talking, right? So if that's the first step, then get the room, put the ideas up on the board,
right?
Decide which ideas we're going to start with. Decide what does success look like. Decide when are we going to check back in. And let's not forget, it's the dollars that are going to allow things to happen. Having all of us digging into our pockets and screaming and yelling about what can we do, when out of all of our paychecks goes dollars into the local government, the state government, the federal government. Those are our dollars. So they need to come to work for us. They need to be able to fund Jeremy Griffin. They need to be able to fund Maurice. They need to be able to fund Asa. And the people who feel this right now, who feel the connection with our family and the pain, need to do that. And it's an awareness question. My last point, Zachariah Owen July, on July 2nd, 2022, was the only person killed in the city of Philadelphia. Google it right now. You'll find absolutely nothing. So if you do that, then it doesn't happen, so it doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, why is anybody going to work or do anything about it? We need to do different. We need to fund everybody that's here. We need to hold people accountable. And you're right, we get in where we can.
Yeah.
So I'm asking my village, get in, right? And I'm asking all the rest of the villages to get in, because otherwise we're not going to be left. We're going to be dead, or we're going to be in jail. And that's just a dad speaking who's lost his son.
Thank you all. Todd, pass it back to you. There's a lot for us to chew on, so go right ahead, Todd.
Thank you, David. On behalf of my colleagues at Global Citizen, thank you to our conversationalists for an incredibly powerful discussion and conversation, to Ken, Jason, Asa, Jeremy, Maurice, and my brother David for moderating, as always, and to all of you in the Zoom for participating. We at Global Citizen are committed to working with all of you and our network of partners, always for racial and social justice for all, on all levels. And it's been said tonight that while those most affected by white supremacy and gun violence must take the lead and not be told by people like me the solutions, we must all see this as our problem, and there is responsibility for each and every one of us. To do that, we have to harness all the available resources there are in the community. And our words and building awareness are essential, but words without option is just not an option. So thank you again to everyone. Stay safe, and for now, good night.
Night.
But
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.